Open water, gray sea in every direction, no coastline, no stars, the sky is a white sheet of cloud. You are on a Viking longship in the North Atlantic. The year is 1000. Greenland lies 900 nautical miles west, and you have no map, no compass, no GPS, nothing a modern sailor would recognize. You have wood, rope, the ocean beneath you, and a hidden sun above. That's it. Yet this crew will make landfall within miles of their target, not once, repeatedly, across decades. How? The answer is a navigation system so layered that researchers needed physics labs and computer simulations to decode it. And one piece, a small crystal, reads the sky in a way no human eye can. That's what this video pulls apart, layer by layer. And the last one has nothing to do with instruments at all. Here's the scale of what we're talking about. The crossing from Norway to Greenland covers roughly 1,600 kilometers of open ocean. For 4 to 6 days, there is no land, no reference point, nothing to steer by except sky and sea. Now put that in perspective. In 1492, 500 years later, Columbus set sail for the New World. He carried a magnetic compass, written charts, the full backing of the Spanish crown, a fleet of 3 ships, and every advantage his century could offer. He also believed he'd landed in India. He was off by an entire continent. He made 4 voyages to the Americas and never once understood where he actually was. The Vikings had no compass, no charts, no fleet, and they knew exactly where they were going. The compass didn't reach European sailors until the 13th century. The sextant came in 1731, GPS in 1995. Vikings were crossing this ocean 1,000 years before any of these existed. The Gokstad ship, pulled from a burial mound in 1880, is 23 meters long and 5 wide. Room for 35 men. No cabin, no chart room. Just an open hull, sitting less than a meter above the waterline. Now think about the precision required. 1 degree of error across 1,600 kilometers pushes you 28 kilometers off course. 2 degrees? You miss Greenland entirely. You sail into the Labrador Sea. Nobody is coming to find you. The Norse manuscript Hauksbok preserves one of the few surviving route descriptions. Head due west from Norway, pass north of Shetland, close enough to see it in clear weather. South of the Faroes, keeping the sea between the mountain tops. Then south of Iceland. That's it. No coordinates, no bearings. Visual references to islands you might never see if the weather turns. How did Vikings navigate the open ocean without any of these tools? The popular answer is courage. Hardy Norse seafarers who pointed west and hoped. That's wrong. The evidence tells a different story entirely. These were people who tracked latitude by the sun at midday, who read ocean swells like road signs, and who may have used polarized light, a phenomenon science wouldn't describe for 8 centuries, to find the sun through solid cloud. They didn't stumble across the Atlantic. They engineered their way across it. 3 layers, each more remarkable than the last. Start with the most critical input, the sun. Viking navigation was fundamentally solar. Know where the sun is, you know your direction. Track its height at midday, you know your latitude. Everything flows from that single point. On a clear day, this is simple. But the North Atlantic doesn't do clear days. Cloud and fog can blank out the sky for a week. In the far north, summer sun sits so low that even light cloud swallows it. So how do you find a sun you cannot see? The Norse sagas mention a solarstein, a sunstone. In the saga of King Olaf, the king asks a man to find the sun during snowy, overcast weather. To check the answer, Olaf holds up a sunstone, looks at the sky, sees where the light comes from. For centuries, scholars dismissed this as legend, a magical artifact, nothing real. Then physicists got involved. In 1967, Danish archaeologist Thorkild Ramsku proposed the sunstone was Iceland's Spar, a transparent calcite crystal common across Scandinavia. This crystal does something extraordinary. Light passing through it splits into two beams. Hold it up, you see a double image. Now here's the part that matters. Those two beams respond differently to polarized light. Think of it as an invisible fingerprint in the sky. Rings of polarized light centered on the sun. They're even behind thick cloud. You can't see them, but a calcite crystal can. Rotate the crystal slowly. When both beams reach equal brightness, it's aligned with the sun's true position, through cloud, through fog, even after the sun drops below the horizon. If you've seen the television series Vikings, you've already watched this in action. First episode. Ragnar Lothbrok, Travis Fimmel, holds a pale crystal to an overcast sky and finds the sun. The show's historical consultant, Justin Pollard, suggested weaving the sunstone into the plot. 2 weeks after that episode aired in 2013, a calcite crystal turned up in an Elizabethan shipwreck. Exactly the kind of stone the sagas described. Fiction and archaeology colliding in real time. But here's where the debate gets sharp. Physicist Guy Ropars at the University of Rennes tested calcite under controlled conditions. His result? Accuracy within 1 degree of the sun's actual position. Simulations in Royal Society Open Science modeled 3,600 voyages. Ships using sunstone readings every 3 hours or less reached Greenland 92 to 100% of the time. The physics is solid, but skeptics raise one stubborn fact. No confirmed sunstone has been found at a Viking site. The lab says it works. Whether it was used on a pitching longship, that's unproven. Which side are you on in this matter? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. That Elizabethan crystal from the Alderney, sunk near the Channel Islands in 1592, lay less than a meter from the ship's navigational dividers, and recent excavations recovered the first calcite fragment at a Norse settlement. People in the Viking Age had these crystals. Whether they held them to the sky is the question that won't go away. But even a perfect sunstone only solves one problem: finding the sun. To cross an ocean, the Norse needed to read far more than the sky. Even the best crystal is useless if you can't act on what it tells you. There were days when nothing worked. Total fog, whiteout, no sun, no stars, no shadow to cast. On those days, the Vikings turned to the oldest instrument available, the ocean itself. Start with what they could see: birds. The story of Floki Vilgerdarson is recorded in the Landnámabók, Iceland's Book of Settlements. Around 868, Floki sailed west from the Faroes carrying 3 ravens. He released the first. It flew back toward the Faroes. He released the second. It circled the ship and returned. The third flew northwest. It didn't come back. Floki followed it. He found Iceland. They called him Raven Floki after that. This wasn't superstition. It was applied biology. Ravens are land birds. They don't rest on open water. A raven that doesn't return has found solid ground. Its bearing is your heading. No instrument needed. But birds were only the surface layer. Beneath them, the sea itself was speaking. Experienced Norse navigators knew its language. What comes next is a set of techniques so intuitive they sound almost primitive, until you realize modern oceanography uses the exact same principles with satellites. If this kind of detail keeps you watching, A light takes 1 second and genuinely helps. Now, the ocean. Deep ocean swells roll in consistent directions, driven by dominant weather systems. A navigator who knew the baseline pattern could detect drift by feeling the wave angle against the hull, not seeing it, feeling it, through the timber beneath his feet. When swells bounce off a distant coastline, they create interference, a crosshatch on the surface visible for kilometers. A trained eye could read Iceland's signature before any peak broke the horizon. If you've spent time on open water, you know what this means. The color shift at the horizon, the feel of current your instruments haven't caught yet. The Vikings built an entire navigation system on that kind of awareness. Norse sailors also tracked whale migrations and watched watercolor. Green meant shallowing depths. Dark blue meant open ocean. They used a weighted plumb line to sample the seabed. Sand, clay, shell. Each told a skilled navigator where he was, by touch, by taste. A man could put mud on his tongue and know he was near the Faroe Shelf. Here's the modern parallel. Today, oceanographers track 3 satellite variables: swell propagation, sea surface temperature, chlorophyll concentration. 3 data streams processed by computers. The Vikings tracked those same 3: wave direction, water temperature, water color, with their feet, skin, and tongues. Same inputs, same logic, 1,000 years apart. Before we get to the instrument, we need to understand the principle it served. This idea, more than any crystal or bird, is what made Viking ocean crossings possible. It's called latitude sailing. The concept is almost absurdly simple. Every place on Earth sits on a line of latitude. Greenland's southern tip sits at roughly 61 degrees north. Norway's departure point sits near the same line. The navigator's task was not to plot a complex route. It was to do 2 things: get to the right latitude and hold it. Sail north or south until your noon sun measurement matches your target. Then turn east or west. Hold that line. Day after day until land appears. That Hauksbach route I mentioned earlier, it makes perfect sense now. Get on the 61st parallel. Sail west. Shetland, Faroes, Iceland, those aren't waypoints. They're confirmation you're still on the right line. This is worth pausing on. The Vikings didn't need to know where they were on a map. They needed one number, their latitude, and the discipline to hold it. One measurement, repeated at noon every day. The entire Atlantic crossing reduced to a single discipline. That is not primitive navigation. That is elegant engineering. But to do this, you need a way to measure latitude. And that brings us to a small wooden disc found in the ruins of a Greenland farm. In 1948, archaeologist Kristen Vebeck was excavating a Norse homestead on the shore of Unartok Fjord. Among the remains of an 11th century convent, his team recovered half of a wooden disc, 7 centimeters across, a hole in the center, deliberate scratches on the face. Some researchers dismissed it as decoration. Danish naval historian Carl Sulver looked closer. The scratches weren't random. They were shadow paths. Put a vertical pin through that center hole. As the sun crosses the sky, the pin's shadow traces a curve. That curve changes with the date and your latitude. Sulver identified lines matching the summer solstice and the equinoxes at the 61st parallel, the transatlantic route. This was a sun compass, the sun's own shadow revealing true north. The entire thing is smaller than a coffee cup. No moving parts, no magnets, no electronics. In 1984, Norwegian explorer Ragnar Thorsith put a replica to the ultimate test. A transatlantic crossing in a reconstructed Norse merchant ship. The deviation between this 1,000-year-old design and the ship's modern magnetic compass, negligible. Every engineer watching should feel something stir at that. But here's what makes this truly remarkable. For years, everyone assumed the disc was just a compass. Then, in 2013, Hungarian researchers at Eötvös Loránd University looked again. The imprecision scholars had dismissed as sloppy craftsmanship, not errors, features. The disc wasn't optimized for direction. It was optimized to find local noon. And local noon gives you latitude. This changes everything. The vase isn't just a compass, it's a latitude reader. The one tool that makes latitude sailing work. If you've ever navigated by dead reckoning, on a boat, on foot, during military service, you know the feeling. Building your position from fragments, a bearing here, a time check there, a correction based on what your gut tells you. That's what Norse navigators did every crossing, every day, except their instruments were wood, crystal, and a lifetime of watching the sky. If you've been there, I'd genuinely like to hear about it below. Pair the disc with a sunstone to find the hidden sun. Add a shadow stick to simulate the missing shadow. Now, you have a system that works in twilight, through cloud, and up to 50 minutes after sunset. 3 simple objects, crystal, stick, disc, and a navigator can hold his latitude across the open Atlantic. Here's something that almost never appears in the popular version of this story. It may be the most remarkable and most fragile layer of all. The Vikings had no written charts, no drawn maps. Not a single piece of cartography survives. Yet their route knowledge spanned from Constantinople to Newfoundland, thousands of miles. All of it lived in human memory, and only there. The sagas weren't just fireside entertainment. They were encoded navigation manuals, route descriptions embedded in hero stories, landmark sequences woven into genealogies. A young sailor listening to his grandfather by the longhouse fire was absorbing the same data a modern pilot reads off an approach chart, just in a format designed to survive without paper. Archaeologist Anton Englert at the Viking Ship Museum in Roskilde puts it plainly. Viking knowledge was experiential, cumulative, and social. It lived in the crew, not on paper. Now think about what that means. If a generation of navigators died in a famine or a failed crossing, the knowledge was gone. Not archived, not backed up, erased. Every saga forgotten was a route lost. Every elder who died young took a piece of the Atlantic map with him. This may explain the collapse of the Norse Greenland colony. When the community shrank, the navigation knowledge shrank with it. The sunstone, the sun compass, the wave patterns, the birds, none worked in isolation. Together, carried in the minds of experienced sailors, they formed a mental atlas of the North Atlantic, refined across centuries, with no backup except the next generation's willingness to listen. Step back from the details for a moment. These men sailed open wooden boats across the most dangerous ocean on Earth. No engines, no electronics, no satellite. What they had was a system, built across generations, paid for in lives, carried in human knowledge, crystal and carved wood, birds released from the bow, the angle of a swell against the hull, the shadow of a pin on a disc the size of your palm, and a single number, their latitude, held steady day after day across empty ocean. With this, they reached Iceland in 874, Greenland by 985, North America around the year 1000. 5 centuries before Columbus, who, with his magnetic compass, his written charts, and his royal funding, still managed to believe he'd reached India. The Vikings, with none of those advantages, knew exactly where they were, and they could get back. The Norse didn't conquer the North Atlantic with brute courage. They decoded it. They read the sky when no one else could, listened to the ocean when no one else was paying attention, and trusted human memory to carry what no document preserved. They weren't just warriors. They were the finest navigators the medieval world ever produced. If this channel has become a place where you find stories worth your time, subscribing means you'll be here when the next one arrives. We've barely scratched the surface of what these people built. The next time you glance at your GPS without a second thought, consider this. 1,000 years ago, a man stood at the bow of a longship, held a crystal to an overcast sky, and found the sun, checked the shadow on a wooden disc, and confirmed his latitude. Then he sailed on. That crystal is gone. That disc is half buried in Greenland. But the knowledge, the way of seeing, that still works.